And welcome to Hannity. And this is a Fox News alert. And tonight we are following four major breaking news stories involving what is the biggest Russian scandal in the history of this country. The evidence is now incontrovertible. It's overwhelming that the Clintons sold out our national security to the Russians, and the Obama administration did nothing to stop them, and then they covered it up. Democrats and the media, they have been lying to you for over a year about what is really going on. Tonight we have brand new details as we continue to expose the truth that they won't even talk about. Also tonight, Ivanka Trump will join us for an exclusive interview. Also Newt Gingrich, that's coming up later. But first, NBC News reporting tonight the brother of former Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta is now under investigation by the special counsel, Robert Mueller. We'll also check in with John Solomon from The Hill. He has a new explosive report about a Russian spy trying to gain access to Hillary and Bill back in 2009. Also, Congressman Ron DeSantis says the House is now probing, thanks to, of course, Sarah, John Solomon, and this program, the Uranium One deal, and the FBI informant who helped expose this scandal can prove it and can show it was a quid pro quo. Also, Hillary Clinton is lashing out at the president, Fox News, and yours truly over the new revelations about Uranium One and her potentially criminal conduct. We're going to cover all of this. We have an important breaking news opening monologue. All right, so when it comes to Russia, we have been telling you for over a year that Democrats, their allies in the mainstream media, have been flat out lying to you, the American people, about what is really happening. Now, we've also been predicting that it would only be a matter of time before they manufactured hysteria conspiracy theories on Russia blew up in their faces, and that this entire thing is going to boomerang back on the Democrats and, of course, the media. Tonight, that continues to happen, and let me tell you why. NBC News is out with a bombshell report. Here's their own headline. Mueller is now investigating Democratic lobbyist Tony Podesta. Name sound familiar? Now, he happens to be the brother of Hillary Clinton's former campaign chairman, John Podesta. And according to NBC News, the special counsel, Robert Mueller, has launched a criminal inquiry into Tony Podesta and his lobbying firm, the Podesta Group. As NBC is reporting, Mueller's investigation began by looking into the finances of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, but has since now expanded to include Tony Podesta over whether his firm violated what is known as FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Now, under the law, lobbyists in the United States who work for foreign entities, they must register with the Department of Justice and disclose what they're doing. And according to NBC, well, the Podesta Group lobbied for a Ukrainian nonprofit called the European Center for a Modern Ukraine that has ties to pro-Russia political parties in that country. Now, this is where it gets interesting. As NBC News reports, the Podesta Group updated that registration and about its work with the Ukrainian group only in June, only after media reports, only after Congress started asking questions. This hypocrisy from the Democrats, beyond stunning. Now, we have heard for over a year now, Russia is a hostile country, Putin's such a bad character. Now it's the Democrats? What do you hear from the media, the corrupt media? Crickets, nothing. Hillary Clinton, members of her campaign, they have been attacking President Trump and claiming there's a Trump-Russia conspiracy collusion despite zero evidence for over a year, while John Podesta's brother, that's right, John Podesta's brother, the guy that ran Hillary's campaign, may have broken the law. Also tonight, John Solomon is out with another explosive report about Hillary Clinton. Take a look at this headline. FBI watched, then acted as Russian spy moved closer to Hillary Clinton. Remember the media's reaction to Paul Manafort and Don Jr.? Now, according to The Hill, the FBI has evidence that when Hillary Clinton first became the Secretary of State, this is in 2009, Vladimir Putin and the Russians, they launched a campaign to try and gain access to Hillary, her top aides, her husband, Bill Clinton. And according to The Hill, one attempt included a female Russian spy pretending to be an American accountant. Now, that spy used a false identity to secure a job with a major Democratic donor in the hopes that she would be able to collect intelligence on Hillary Clinton and the State Department. Well, guess what? That Russian agent was eventually arrested and deported as part of the FBI's massive 2010 spy ring bust. Now, according to an email that The Hill obtained, the Democratic donor, who may have been compromised, actually contacted the State Department to alert Hillary Clinton about what was happening. Now, we did reach out to that donor for comment. We didn't hear back. Shocking. Now, Hillary Clinton's spokesperson significantly tries, as always, to downplay this story, responding to The Hill this weekend, claiming, oh, it's all part of a partisan distraction. In other words, the vast right-wing conspiracy. Not surprising, but think about this for a second. At the exact same time, Vladimir Putin and Russia are trying to infiltrate Clinton's inner circle. Hillary is using a private server that had top secret special access program, classified national security information on it, the mom and pop shop bathroom, the same server that was less secure than your average Gmail account. Clinton knew what was happening because her office commented on the Russia spy ring bust back in 2010, yet she continued to use the personal server. Now, that's beyond reckless, and it's a direct threat to national security, but that's only part of it. And if that's not shocking enough, we have John Solomon and Sarah Carter's reporting from last week. Here are the highlights from last week. Bill Clinton, he tried to get the State Department to give him permission to meet with Russian nuclear officials while the Uranium One deal was being approved by the Obama administration and his own wife. And an American lobbying firm took millions of dollars from a Russian state-run nuclear energy corporation, while at the same time providing pro bono services, free services, to the Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton Foundation. Now, back in 2009, the FBI was doing their job. They discovered evidence, including documents and emails and financial records. They had eyewitness accounts that the Russian nuclear officials working on behalf of Vladimir Putin and Russia and Moscow, they were engaging in bribery, kickbacks, money laundering, extortion, and various other types of racketeering. And by the way, other criminal conduct. Now, just before the Bill gets $500,000 when speaking in Moscow. That's twice his normal speaking fee. He got it from a bank that had an interest in the Uranium One deal. Well, Bill, he tried to meet while he was in Russia with nuclear leaders. He has to ask his own wife's State Department for permission. But instead, he didn't meet with them. He met directly with Vladimir Putin and the Russian government that has ties to the bank that's paying Bill Clinton and has an interest in Uranium One. Why? Because Vladimir Putin, he wanted control over America's uranium market. And what is so inexcusable is that the Obama administration, Hillary Clinton, Eric Holder, so many others, they let this happen. And in 2010, the Uranium One deal, it was approved. It gave Vladimir Putin what he wanted: control of 20% of America's uranium supply, the foundational material for nuclear weapons. Who would ever do this? And we also learned from The Hill and CircaNews.com. The FBI has evidence, including testimony. They have an informant that Russian nuclear officials funneled millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation while Hillary was serving as Secretary of State and personally signing off on the Uranium One deal in the first place that gave the uranium to Putin. And it turns out the informant was blocked by the Obama administration from exposing to Congress what was happening. Now, the New York Times also reported back in 2015 that the Russian nuclear company, Uranium One, was actually even exporting yellow cake uranium outside of our country to Canada. Now, even though they didn't have a license. So we have no idea what Putin has done with it, where it's ended up. Did it go to North Korea? Did it go to Iran? There's also several key officials that need to testify about what they knew and when they knew it. For example, the former Attorney General, Eric Holder, he oversaw the FBI. The FBI had all this information about bribery and kickbacks and money laundering in 2009. That was his job. He was also a member, Eric Holder was, of the committee that approved Uranium One along with Hillary. So he had to know what was going on. Then you've heard the name Rod Rosenstein. He appointed Mueller's special counsel looking into Trump-Russia collusion. He's the deputy attorney general now. He actually helped lead the FBI investigation into the Russian bribery scandal. And we have the special counsel himself, Robert Mueller. Well, back in 2009, he was the FBI director during this entire scandal. And now we're supposed to trust Mueller is going to investigate Russian interference fairly, objectively, and honestly, when he didn't tell Congress about the Russian bribery plot and crimes that the FBI said they knew were being committed. This is inexcusable. It's also another reason Mueller needs to go. and he needs to go immediately. There's also the fact that Robert Mueller has a troubling track record as a federal prosecutor. Take a look at this headline from FoxNews.com. Quote, Mueller team criticized by fellow attorneys for his history of questionable tactics. Now, a criminal defense attorney is saying that Mueller tried to entrap him while the now special counsel was working as a prosecutor in Boston. The same attorney also warned that Mueller's Russian probe, well, should be met with skepticism. And tonight, Congressman Ron DeSantis says the House Oversight Committee is now investigating this Uranium One deal. Congressman DeSantis also revealed some stunning information about the FBI informant. Let's take a look at this.
I've been able to speak with the confidential informant that helped the FBI uncover this bribery scheme. I've spoken with his attorney, and this informant wants to tell his story, but he's currently under a non-disclosure agreement that was signed with the Eric Holder Justice Department. He came forward in 2016, was threatened with reprisal from the Loretta Lynch Justice Department. We have the money that went to Bill Clinton for the speech, the $500,000, millions of dollars to the foundation from sources connected with Uranium One, and then you had the approval of the deal on the CFIUS board, which Hillary Clinton was a member of in 2010. So you do have the quid, you have the quo. This informant, I believe, would be able to link those two together because he was right at the heart of a lot of what was going on at the time.
Do you see what's happening? Since we've been covering this, because John Solomon, Sarah Carter have done amazing investigative work. Maybe, and we've been covering on it on this show. Now Congress is getting it. Now think about this. Maybe what Ron DeSantis was saying, maybe that's the reason why the Obama administration blocked this FBI informant from talking, because he might be able to expose the criminal conduct from the Clintons and others within the Obama administration. Now, whatever non-disclosure agreement this informant apparently signed with the Obama Department of Justice, it needs to be ripped up. And it can be ripped up by the Trump administration, by the Justice Department. You, the American people, deserve to know the truth about the Clintons and how they sold out your national security. And finally tonight, in just a pathetic display, and despite mountains of evidence and now 2 congressional investigations, Hillary Clinton is saying, oh, she did nothing wrong during the Uranium One deal. And Clinton is also attacking President Trump, Fox News, and, yeah, even yours truly, because we're telling you the truth. Watch this.
Hannity on his program has been very critical of the Uranium One deal. The president saying, with regard to Russia, that's the real story in all of this. What would you say to those critics?
I would say it's the same baloney they've been peddling for years, and there's been no credible evidence by anyone. Trump and his allies, including Fox News, are really experts at distraction and diversion. So the closer the investigation about real Russian ties between Trump associates and real Russians, as we heard Jeff Sessions finally admit to in his testimony the other day, the more they want to just throw mud on the wall, and I'm their favorite target, me and, President Obama. We're the ones that they always like to put into the crosshairs.
The vast right-wing conspiracy is back. Hillary, I have a few questions for you. Why would you ever give Vladimir Putin, the man you've been telling us is so horrible, and Russia, of course, our biggest enemy, why would you give them 20% of America's uranium, the foundational material for nuclear weapons? Why would you ever do that? Why did your husband get twice the amount of money that he usually gets for a speech in Moscow? And at the time of the deal, he meets with Vladimir. And by the way, I have another question. Hillary Clinton, why did you take $145+ million from all the people associated with this deal? And will you go under oath and answer questions? I doubt it. You don't want to, do you? Center for Law and Justice, their chief counsel, Jay Sekulow. From the Hill, John Solomon. He's been breaking a lot of these stories. And from Circa News, Sarah Carter. John, we'll start with you. Let's start with Hillary's comments first. What are your thoughts? She's now back to the vast right-wing conspiracy.
Well, it was a non-denial denial at the end of the day, right? And we've seen these many times before, and we've seen denials that Hillary Clinton made that turned out not to be true. I didn't send classified information out of my email. She did, didn't she? Back in 2010, her staff said that she hadn't been the target of this Russian spying ring. We now know from the counterintelligence chief of the FBI, she was the target, and she got an email from the donor warning her that this story was coming out. So I think we have to take everything she says with a grain of salt, follow the evidence, follow the money. We'll get the real truth at some point.
If we follow the evidence, follow the money, Jay Sekulow, from a legal perspective, put your ACLJ hat on, not your counsel to the president hat on. What vulnerabilities are here? I see many.
Well, there's a lot, but one of the questions you've got to ask is, there was an agency that was charged with determining whether the sale could take place. That's the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States. Did they know about this investigation going on by the FBI? Did they know about the spy ring before they approved this? Because at the end of the day, the real question here is, why in the world were we selling or allowing to be sold 20% of our uranium reserves in the United States to a company that was going to ultimately be controlled by the Russian government? So that's the question you ask yourself. Where was these agencies that had to sign off on all this in the nature of disclosing this?
Wait a minute, Jay. Eric Holder had to know. The FBI, the head of the FBI, Robert Mueller, had to know. Because they're saying the FBI knew of crimes, bribery, kickbacks, extortion, money laundering. These are not small things that they had evidence on.
Right. So what happens in a situation like this, the Department of Justice representative, which was Eric Holder, the Attorney General, should have known, had to have known about the investigation. Now, the FBI head was not on this committee. What I want to know, and I think what the American people have a right to know, is what was this committee told before they authorized the sale to the Russian company? That is the critical aspect of this legally.
Sarah, they had to know. Now, we have a Senate investigation. We have a House investigation. Jeff Sessions wouldn't say directly because of the policy of the Department of Justice, but I assume he's investigating this. And now we also have the whole issue of this. We have a witness. We have a source. We have somebody that wants to tell the whole story with documents, with evidence, with facts, and I'm told even recordings. But he signed this NDA. Who makes a guy that worked for the FBI sign the NDA?
It's the FBI and the Justice Department. So when he first began to work for him, they asked him to sign this non-disclosure agreement. Remember, Sean, this case started out as a counterintelligence case, so it evolved into a criminal case, according to my sources. So there are a lot of issues here, both classified and some that are unclassified. The classified issues, he'll have to speak to the Senate or an intelligence committee behind closed doors in order to reveal what he knows.
Who can lift the non-disclosure agreement that the guy that has the evidence that knew the laws were broken at the time? They knew this in 2009 and 2010. That was John's report today. That's what you've been telling us.
The Attorney General.
That's right, the Attorney
General has that authority.
Yep. That's right.
Well, then, okay, then, Jay, let me go back to your legal hat for a second. So the Attorney General has an obligation now. If you look at the entire year that we have heard Russia, 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 and that Putin is such a bad character, and this is an enemy country of the United States, if you have people, 9 of them, signing off at a time they know that Vladimir Putin's trying to corner the market in this country on uranium, money double the speaking fee the Clinton gets, then the Clinton Foundation money gets $145 million after, they're signing off. Bill Clinton's meeting Vladimir. He wants to meet with the nuclear officials in Russia. And I'm sorry, it seems that a lot of crimes are committed here. So, go ahead.
You can add to that the fact that the spies that were deported from the United States were not charged until 4 years later. So, again, it goes back to that fundamental issue of what did this committee know? And, again, if you're the head of the Department of Justice, the Attorney General of the United States, you had to know what was going on here. But the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, has the legal authority. He has the authority to remove the NDA and at least as to classified information, do that. Yeah, but the classified information would, of course, be behind, in protection and behind closed doors. But the other information, look, I think the American people have not only the right to know, I think the government has the obligation to let the American people know how 20% of the uranium in the United States was sold to the Russians.
You talk
That's a Russian scandal. You want a Russian scandal? There's one.
Well, wait a minute, because that now compromised our national security. And isn't Vladimir Putin friends with the Iranian mullahs? Is he friends with Kim Jong-un? Who's he giving the yellow cake that he's illegally exporting to Canada at this particular point? All right, I want to ask this. What about the conflicts of interest, Mueller? What about the conflicts of interest, Rosenstein? What about the conflict of interest, McNabe and others? John, we'll start with you.
You know, I don't see a direct conflict of interest with any of those guys. Right? Their job is to go and find the truth, and if they do their job correctly, we're going to get the truth on this, as we're going to get on all the different things in Russia. If they don't do their job, then people are going to say, were they conflicted? Right now, I think there's an important question that hasn't been discussed. When things start in the counterintelligence world, they tend to go to the president in a PDB in a briefing, to the intelligence chiefs long before they ever get to the criminal side. I think one of the questions we have to start asking is, what did the president know? Did any of this get briefed to the president in the form of intelligence? He's meeting with Medvedev, with Putin. You'd think they'd be telling these things. Yeah. That's one of the things I think we're going to learn a lot about in the next few weeks.
We got to know an answer to that. And that would mean that
we do.
Former President Obama needs to be deposed. All right. Let me ask Sarah, then I'll ask John. Do you want to answer the conflict of interest question, Sarah? But also, I want to ask you this. How much more do you know is coming on this? Because, go ahead.
Oh, I certainly think that the informant has a lot to share with both Congress and the American people. And I know that he felt it was his patriotic duty to come forward with this and to share this information.
Have you and John spoke to the informant?
Yes, I have spoken to the informant through his attorney. Yes, I have.
And John?
I can't say.
You can't say?
No, sorry.
They're protected by the First Amendment to not.
No, thanks. I don't mean to be evasive, right, but I just can't say.
You be quiet for a minute. I don't need that attorney stuff. You're ruining my show here.
But Sean,
but how much more is coming? Because to me, it sounds like look. I've heard they have not only documents, emails, financial records, eyewitnesses, infiltration. Is there also tapes here?
There are definitely.
Tapes.
Wow.
Yeah. The FBI records refer to at least one videotape and 2 audio recordings that potentially will be available to the public at some point.
Jay, if they come out, if people don't get indicted here, we don't have equal justice under the law, do we?
No, and you're right. And I'll tell you, take what John said. I'd sure like to know what President Obama was briefed on with regard to this whole transaction as well, because, again, this was the sale of a U.S. Reserves of uranium. I mean, it was a Canadian company first, and then we authorized the sale to the Russians. It does not pass the smell test. And I'll tell you what, legally, very questionable. Potentially illegal. I think no question illegality here. But I'll tell you something else, Sean. The American people have a right to know what happened.
And all of you, and John and Sarah, you guys made this happen. And we are going to get to the truth. And all of you in the media, you're awful. When we come back, Newt Gingrich, Ivanka Trump, all here. Busy news night tonight. Back to Hannity here with reaction to our opening monologue and the new developments in this massive corruption Uranium One scandal. The author of now the best-selling book, Vengeance, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, you know, I know the Clintons have gotten away with an awful lot in their career. 20% of the foundational material for nuclear weapons. The media has ignored this. Meanwhile, they have had no evidence. Russia, the danger of Vladimir Putin, the danger of Russia. What do you make of all this?
Well, I think we're on the edge of the greatest corruption scandal in American history. Bigger than the scandal in the 1920s about the Teapot Dome, bigger than Grant's presidency in the 1870s. I don't know of any occasion that had the scale of scandal, and you see it building. You watch Mueller, who I've been very critical of, but to his credit, he's now following the Podesta family into their relation with foreigners. He's beginning to follow other cases that are very different. I mean, you know, the great irony here, Sean, may be that the one person who comes out of this totally exonerated is Donald J. Trump, and that the people who did all the attacking, I mean, you have to ask yourself, think back to this. You're Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. It's election night. You've lost. You're John Podesta. You know that Podesta Associates has been doing work for the Russians and the Ukrainians. How do you have the chutzpah to decide that it's the Russians who elected Trump? I mean, why did they have no sense of vulnerability that once they opened this, it was just going to get sicker and sicker? And I'll tell you, just mark this for tonight. The breaking point will come when the Congress has the courage to demand that every donation to the Clinton Foundation be published, and we learn how tremendous the level of foreign influence buying was and how unbelievable it was and what a threat that is to the American democracy.
It seems that there could be no longer, now finally the House and finally the Senate, and I'm kind of assuming and interpreting from the Attorney General's comments that the investigation is here. But I think you're right in this sense. I think this has moved way beyond Trump-Russia collusion. Now, I don't like investigative creep. I've been very clear about it. I know that now it's about Paul Manafort's financial dealings from long before he was with Trump and the Podesta Group. But I can't think of a single circumstance ever to give 20% of uranium. Now that we follow the money, and now that we see Bill gets double his speaking fee, and he wanted to meet with the nuclear officials, and he met with Putin, and in his speech supported the Uranium One deal, and his wife had to sign off on this. And then all the Canadians that were involved in the deal kicked back $145 million of the foundation. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, this is a sellout of American national security.
Oh, yeah.
At the highest level.
Look, everything the average American has believed about corruption in Washington is about to be validated. Alan Guelzo, who is a great historian at Gettysburg College, wrote me recently that by the time this is all out, every other presidential scandal in American history will look trivial. That this is the most corrupt, the most unbelievably unlawful administration in American history. The Clintons are only a part of this. Wait till you get to Attorney General Lynch. Wait till you get to her predecessor. Wait till you get to Samantha Powers at the UN. This is just going to keep on rolling. And I think we're going to look back a year or two from now, and we're going to be stunned at the dishonesty and the bankruptcy of the Obama administration, of which the you know, if you will, the apex is the Clinton team. And I have a very simple challenge for the Congress. Get all of their donations on the record. When you go to the Canadian Clinton Foundation, which didn't have to report, very clever legal gimmick,
one last thing,
but wrong, you start taking these apart. It's horrendous.
Follow that, and also lift the NDA. And apparently there are tapes, there are emails. Let me just go through the mountain of evidence that they have. The FBI had in 2009 documents, emails, they have the financial records, they have eyewitnesses, and they had someone infiltrate. Right. And they knew crimes were being committed. They knew then. That raises questions about Mueller, too, but I've got a break. Stay right there. We're going to stay with you. We'll come back. When we come back, we have the other issues in Washington. More NFL players just continuing to disrespect the flag. Guess what happened? The crowds are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And Ivanka Trump joins us straight ahead on this busy breaking news night. Welcome back to Hannity. Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, he's sounding the alarm about the impact player protests are having on the NFL. He said, quote, "There's no question the league is suffering negative effects from these protests." Jerry Jones is right. Take a look. This is only 2 stadiums this weekend. We can only run 2. One from Miami, and I think the other one's from Cleveland. Look at all the empty seats post kickoff. Look at this. It's empty. Here's what it looked like in Cleveland, Ohio for the Browns yesterday. We continue now with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. They want to keep doing this? If Roger Goodell doesn't want to take a stand, this is the result. I'm not watching NFL games. I'm watching college football now. And I think most Americans are waiting for the NFL to stand up for those that fought, bled, and died under that flag. It's that simple.
Look, I think you're exactly right. I think what the multi-millionaire players who are out there posturing don't understand is most of us watch the game to watch football. We don't watch it to watch political protest. We don't watch it to watch their personal idiosyncrasies. And frankly, they ain't that big a deal in the long run. I think that this has been devastatingly negative for the NFL. I think that the absence of leadership at the level of Goodell is astonishing. I think that the owners are about to decide that their pocketbook is being hurt. And I think when enough of them decide that, they're going to talk to Goodell. But it's really sad. I mean, why should it be so? Just take the last few weeks. 4 young Americans die in Niger, hunting down and killing Islamist terrorists. Why should it be so hard to recognize and acknowledge their sacrifice by standing up during the national anthem? I mean, what is the sickness which is permeating our culture, which leads people to believe that they have the right to disrespect their flag, their pledge, their anthem, the veterans, the people who keep them free, the people who keep them safe? I mean, there's something sick about what's happening in part of our culture, and we need to have the guts to confront it head on.
I want to ask you, I want to play for you Maxine Waters. And when I play this comment, I want you to think about it through the prism. Why are you looking at me? Why are you laughing? You're not allowed to laugh at my question. I've known you for 20, 30 years.
No, I'm not
and
laughing.
You're mocking your host. You're mocking your
question,
friend.
Sean.
I want to play it.
I'm not mocking you. I'm thinking about Maxine Waters.
By the way, regaining my time or whatever she said, just went on, reclaiming my time, reclaiming. All right, but this is her saying she's going to take out the president. Think of it if somebody said this about President Obama.
I am sitting here listening, watching, absorbing, thinking about Ali, even though I never met him. And with this kind of inspiration, I will go and take Trump out tonight.
What's your reaction?
Well, first of all, I'm guessing that her reference to Muhammad Ali is a reference to boxing, and so she meant it in the sense of hitting in a ring. First of all, let me say, you'd never get it to happen, but the idea of a round between her and Donald Trump is pretty interesting. I think he'd probably win in the opening half minute. But look, what you have on the left, and you see it over and over.
He's not going to hit a girl, a woman. He's not going to do that. It's not.
Oh, sure. I mean, if he was confronted with her,
yeah,
he would be very pleasant until she hit him, and the second she hit him, he'd knock her down. I mean, let's be honest here. This is crazy.
Geez.
I mean, what
I can
you
see the
have
headline.
on the left,
Newt Gingrich encourages Trump to hit Congresswoman. I can see the headlines now. That's not what you're saying.
Now, look, my point's this: the left. I mean, I did this interview with a reporter the other day, and I cut him off, and I said, you know, you have a pathology. I can't answer your questions because you're pathological. And he was totally stunned. He said, what do you mean? I said, you are so anti-Trump
that
you're not in touch with the real world. So how can I have an interview? I think Maxine Waters is in the same group. There's this whole group of people who are so, frankly, crazy that they're certifiably out of touch with reality. Now,
are you more confident that the Senate now will get this tax reform bill done? Because if they don't, they will
I got to tell you.
Yes.
I'm waiting with bated breath for our good friend Mark Meadows and the Freedom Caucus and others to come together, as he has indicated they will. If the House passes this budget this week, and President Trump had it exactly right, if they pass this budget this week and we can move on to, first of all, the Ways and Means Committee marking up a bill, sending it to the Senate, which I think they will do, I think we got a real shot at doing this. As you know, you and I have been on this the whole time for like 8 or 9 months. This is a big deal.
It's huge.
I think I'm a little bit more optimistic tonight.
They better get it done. This is their job. All right, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Congrats on the success of the book. When we come back, speaking of that, we'll talk to Ivanka Trump next, straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. So earlier today, the first daughter and advisor to the president, Ivanka Trump, she hosted a town hall on tax reform in Pennsylvania. We need money back. I sat down with Ivanka Trump to discuss how the administration plans to move the tax proposal forward and pass it. Take a look. All right, joining us now, Ivanka Trump. Good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm doing great.
So I walk in the door and you start making fun of me. I mean, this is a great way to start an interview.
Well, you know, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, somebody's got to do it. So go ahead. You have an assistant.
Yes.
Or somebody that works for you in PR. And I did something. Go ahead. You can tell everybody. It's fine.
You tried to set her up. And we're almost successful. But what really excited me about this story is when I found out that you actually had a website where you were making matches.
Yes.
Because this is Jared and my secret talent. People don't realize it's our hidden skill. We're matchmakers.
You like to put people together.
7 marriages. 0 divorces, hopefully, wow. God willing, that continues, but 7 matches. So I was feeling really good about myself. I was excited to tell you that statistic and then found out that you literally have hundreds.
I have hundreds.
Like babies are being born named Hannity.
I don't know why. I used to do these long book signings that would go on for hours. And when there was a cute couple come up, I'm like, well, how long have you been dating? They'd say 3 years. And I said, what are you waiting for? And the next thing, the girlfriend's always going, yes. And the guy's going like this. And I'd say, do it right now, and I get the crowd to say it, and a lot of guys would do it. So,
oh my gosh, you and Jared's always pushing people. He's like, you have all the facts. You have all the facts that you need to know.
Yeah.
Make the move. Make the move.
So. Yeah, but a lot of people appreciate it, and they did get married. I even have a child named after me, and dogs. I have more dogs than children named after me. Probably a better name for a dog.
That's very funny.
All right, so it's almost a year since your dad won, and you've gotten involved in a lot of issues, but what you're really focused in now is what I think this election was about, and that is the forgotten men and women. And that's why this tax reform bill is probably his biggest and most important piece of legislation to bring about the economic success that he was running on.
Look, I feel, so privileged to have the opportunity to serve our country. And, you know, nothing about my life was designed to pick up and move to Washington, but I feel really blessed that he entrusted in me and empowered me to do this. But, you know, ultimately, it's about the amazing people of this country that I met over 2 years of campaigning, and the hardships I witnessed, the opportunity to remove barriers so that more people can experience some of the privileges that my family and I were so lucky to have. So, you know, this country gave us everything. It afforded us so many incredible opportunities. And my mission now, through job creation, through economic growth, is to empower as many Americans as I possibly can to realize those same opportunities. And this administration's doing it. We're doing it legislatively. Tax reform is so critical. We're doing it administratively, deregulation, really fueling entrepreneurship in this country. And you see it in terms of optimism. You see it in terms of the stock market. You see it in terms of the conversations you have. I'm here today in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I would hear it in every conversation I had with the people through the course of the day and in the room. So that's what fuels us, and that's what we're fighting for.
He did a very good job of getting rid of burdensome regulation. It's something as a conservative I talk about all the time, because it puts so much pressure on businesses. They can't just go out and do their job. They have to work with the EPA, then they have to work with this other agency. And not that we shouldn't take care of the environment. Of course, we've got to be good stewards of the environment.
And there is some good regulation, but it's gotten out of control. Things in principle was a good idea would have unintended consequences to millions of people. So there's a lot of bad regulation that didn't fulfill the stated goal, even if the intent was pure. So I think rolling back years, decades of layer upon layer of regulation is really freeing up business owners to invest in their businesses, invest in the people who work in their businesses. You see wage growth for the first time. And I think tax reform, is so core to our goal of fueling the economic growth of this country. We need to be competitive. We need a tax code that's reflective of the modern reality of what our workforce look like, including supporting our working families, the majority of which are now dual income, which is why I'm really excited about the realization of a large part of the administration's working family agenda through tax reform, the expansion of the child tax credit, doubling the standard deduction, eliminating the marriage penalty. There's so many critical elements that support our dual values of work and a family, but we need to be competitive, and ultimately we need growth, and that's going to come by ensuring that this is the country that everyone wants to grow their businesses in.
It's amazing your dad rightly said.
Yeah.
We have 1% GDP growth. That's worth $2.5 trillion to the Treasury. That's a lot of money. And the last administration was the first one never to reach 3% GDP growth in a year. I want to go back to the issue you brought up. You've been privileged, because I feel the same way in this sense. I grew up very middle class in America, dishwasher at 12, busboy, waiter, bartender, house painter, wallpaper hanger, tile layer, framer, roofer. I did it all. It was about 2 decades.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and I know.
It's a good list.
It's a pretty good list. But so I look at the economic plan and I'm like, okay, if we can get the factories and manufacturing centers built here, because corporations have lower taxes, because we have less regulation, it's a better environment. The repatriation of trillions from multinationals that would not bring it back here because they'll lose 40 or 50 cents on every dollar, and you make it 10 cents, they're going to spend a lot of money here.
And that's a bipartisan issue. Everyone's been talking for years about all this money that's parked off our shores that wants to come back into this country, and nobody's ever been able to do anything about it. So this tax plan fixes that and enables businesses to bring the money home, to invest in their infrastructure, their businesses right here, and invest in their workers. But to your point about being competitive, the reality is it's a global marketplace now, and we have to compete against other countries. And we are not competitive. We have the highest corporate tax of any country in the developed world. And that is something that very much gets factored into our pricing, very much gets factored into wages. That's why they've stagnated over the past several decades, and you just now are starting to see them rise. And I think a big part of that is the deregulation we were talking about before. But I believe with my heart and soul, and my father does and this administration does, that no one can best the American worker. There is no group of people more innovative, more motivated, more capable. But there's got to be a level playing field, and there's not a level playing field. That is, we've got to level the playing field for the corporation, the small business, who's spending $16 billion a year to comply with a cumbersome tax code, to the individual. I mean, the reality is simplification of our tax code democratizes it.
It does.
You know, if you have a tax code that the average person can't understand, I know I can't. You know, 94% of Americans require professional help to fill out their taxes. Who's that's going to benefit? It's going to benefit the person with an army of accountants and an army of lawyers who can help them find the loopholes and the nuance.
Ivanka, you can give the same factual information to 3 of the best accounting houses in America.
Yeah.
And they'll come up with a different tax liability.
Yep.
I mean, that's how complicated it is. And they're not cheating. They just...
And that was decades. Look, it was decades of lobbyists and special interest group who added a nuance here, a nuance there, a page here, an idea here. And all of that out, simplifying it, democratizing it, and making it work for all Americans with a particular focus on middle-income America. And that is so important, and you know, and what we're all fighting for.
Now, tomorrow we'll have part 2 of my interview with Ivanka Trump, and she answers this question. It was interesting. Jimmy Carter even said that he'd never witnessed any president take as much heat as your dad. But also the family. I mean, you've been attacked. Melania has been attacked. Your little brother's been attacked. Don and Eric, I don't care about them. They kind of deserve
really
it.
Tough.
No,
Yeah.
I'm teasing. But they can handle themselves.
Yeah.
All right, quick. Certain unfairness.
They give it out as well.
Oh, yeah, well, Don in particular, I think
they
does.
punch back.
Yeah. Certain of it is just personal and mean. How do you deal with that? Is that hard? The answer to that question tomorrow night. More Hannity right after this. All right, quick announcement before we go. My movie, Let There Be Light. It's award-winning. I'm the executive producer. In theaters Friday. It's about one man's journey to faith and something your entire family will enjoy. Bring tissues, you will cry. And to check out the listings, just go to Hannity.com. We'll have more later on this week. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left this evening. Let not your heart be troubled. We will never be the left-wing, Trump-hating media. We'll be fair and balanced. Now, I have good news. You know your friend Bill Hemmer? He's on in the morning. He's on tonight, live next. And I saw him in his office. He's been studying all night. Hemmer's next. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.